Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week we have Frank Bazzani back on the show. How you doing, Frank?
I'm doing good, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
Yeah. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about triangle strategy, which I have finished this last week. Frank has been playing some Bayonetta, his first time with that game and series. And then I'll say a little bit about Turning Red, which I watched now that it is on Disney Plus this weekend. So that's kind of the purview of the show. Before we dive into that, though, a little bit of housekeeping for you. You can go check out That Bond Show, our newest regular show here on Saturdays, where Logan and myself come through every week and do the next movie in the Bond series. We just did Moonraker. That was the most recent one that was up. Terrible movie. Both Logan and I agree so on that one. And
I agree too, for what it matters.
For what it's worth. And this coming week, Jarrett Green joined us to talk about For Your Eyes Only, which also not one of my favorites. I really did not like that one. And I say as much in the show, but I think there's also a flavor of when we recorded that one. Part of my frustration for it was that it was legitimately keeping me from just going back and playing Horizon Forbidden West, which is what I wanted to be doing at the time. So there's probably a little bit of extra disdain that I had for it because of that. But also it's not a good movie. So yeah, go check that out. That one goes live on my birthday this Saturday. And go catch all of those episodes of That Bond Show on YouTube, youtube.com/thatnerdysite. Speaking of YouTube, you can catch our weekly Friday evening series that Cameron is heading up, Friday Night Dying Light, as he continues playing through Dying Light 2. We are up through episode 6, I believe, of his adventure. He's already sent me episode 7, so I know I have that one scheduled and ready to go, and that one will be going up live this week. But yeah, those go up every Friday at 6 p.m. Mountain time, which is now, I guess, now it's 6 p.m. Pacific as well. It was previously 5 p.m. But yeah, basically 6 p.m. Arizona time is when I've been scheduling those. So that's when they go up. So you can catch all that fun stuff. And we'd been plugging it up the last few episodes here on That Nerdy Site. So I will just give a shout out to our friend Jazz Foster, whose game that we've been plugging, Retrograde, got fully funded over on Kickstarter.
Nice.
So congrats to them. I managed, or I went in and put a reservation in the final day of the campaign myself. So when it does come out and when we get shipped a copy, I will try and figure out a way to sit down with Cameron and do a That Nerdy Site plays with it or something like that. So yeah, shout out to Jazz and her first game. So yeah, that's
helping us get into the tabletop stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. There you go. So if you like what you hear, please remember to subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Let's dive right on in. So yeah, like I said, I've been playing Triangle Strategy. This is the latest kind of 2D HD 2D game from Square Enix, which in the vein of the Octopath Traveler kind of art style, but this one is much more in the tactics genre. When they kind of released a demo of it last year, I sat down and did a let's play the demo for the site, and had a good time with it. It was it's a fun tactics game. The kind of new little flavors that they bring to it are its story has many branching paths throughout, and when you get to these branching path storyline moments, instead of just being I want to choose which way to go, you basically have a council of 7 of your team members, your allies, that each of them gets an equal vote. And so basically some of them will kind of be I really want to do this thing. I think this should be our plan of action. And others will be no, I think this should be our plan of action. And then sometimes you'll even have a third choice. So you'll have kind of one person spearheading each of these message or these options. And you basically go around to all of your party members in this kind of voting session and basically try and convince them of whatever you want to do, and that's going to have varying degrees of success based on like information you've collected from elsewhere, based on like how much in alignment you are with like that person's kind of thing, because there's like morality and unity and some third like kind of hidden stat throughout the game, that as you I think liberty, morality, unity, and liberty I think are the three. And it's basically like as you make different choices and different conversation things and just do different things throughout the game, like your score in each of those is going up, and that if affects like how well you can sway people to your side in these conversations. And so you basically have to like hope that you've used this person in your party enough, because you'll also kind of like build up that relationship with them and a trust between them if like you fight alongside them a lot. But they can also just basically say like, I appreciate what you're saying, Lord, but I think we need to go this way, and they'll just like vote against your interests and stuff. So it's like that's I think the most interesting little dynamic that the game throws in there. Admittedly, for me, and I was playing on easy because I wasn't looking to like keep myself too stressed or anything like this. Every time, like I managed to sway everybody to my side every time. There was one time at the end where it was basically like there was a 3-path branch and it was like a 3-3 split, and then like the one person that wanted to go that third path. And so like when it finally hit that, and that was the only other time it had that was the only time a tie had come up. When it came to that one, it was like, okay, now you get the deciding vote. So you basically, I was able to tip the scales quite literally into in my favor. So that's like an interesting little additional mechanic to kind of help fuel the narrative. Because there are elements where, like as I said, there's kind of those like 3 hidden stats, but there's also like sections of the game where you're just kind of like going around and talking to NPCs, and if you talk to the right NPCs, you'll get like additional information that you can use to convince some of your party members and stuff like that. And if you just didn't get those, they'll just show up as like a locked off kind of communication, like, oh, you had 3 choices to respond, but you only have one of them because you didn't do the other things you needed to do, or you didn't talk to the right people or something like that. So like that was a cool little flavor. I will say though, like the game has a pacing issue, and that like it doesn't find the best balance between story, these kind of like searching a map for clues sequences, the voting sequences, and then like the combat are basically your 4 things. There's like way too much story scenes for everything else. And so like I was constantly coming back out to the map and just being like, okay, I gotta go like back in for another story sequence. And unlike maybe like a Fire Emblem or something like that, there wasn't a lot in the way of like random battles you could do. It's pretty much like every fight you're doing is a story fight, with the exception of back at like your base camp. You can go into like a mock mental battle at any time there, and they give you like an increasing kind of like series of different battle options to do. So I guess like at any point you can do that, and you gain experience in those, you level up and all that stuff in those as well. But it's like, okay, well, I've already done these fights. I don't need to like, I could grind out and get more experience or get more materials or something for upgrades and stuff, but at this point I'd rather just move the story along, I guess. So I wasn't a huge fan of like that balance. And also I thought the story itself was just kind of like trying really hard to Game of Thronesify things
Mm.
with like constant, deception and betrayals and stuff like that in often like unsatisfying ways, and also sometimes just very confusing ways, because they introduce a shit ton of like characters and history and stuff like that. And there was one point where like I hit a story beat and thought that like it completely recontextualized like a relationship with one of my other party members, because got confused on like the parentage of people or something like that. Where I was like,
Mm.
does that just did that just make me a stepbrother to this person that like I don't know, I don't like. Ugh. Turned out like that wasn't the case, and there was like a different like family lines or something like that. But because I hadn't like met either of those parent characters or anything like that, I got confused on the names and the lineage and stuff like that. So it was just like there wasn't a great, I guess, glossary in that sense, or it was just kind of like throwing a whole bunch of shit at me. So I was like, I don't
Yeah.
like the Game of Thrones comparison would be like, oh, like, did this just say I'm a Tyrell secretly or something like that? Oh well, crap. That's gonna really mess up the relationship I had with Marjorie Tyrell or something like that. Like, it's that kind of thing where I was just like, I don't. It didn't. Those beats didn't work for me. They are less egregious than they needed to be, as it turned out, but or than they could have been, as it turned out. But it was still like it definitely left a sour taste in my mouth. Unlike these sometimes very late game like twists, and suddenly this character is now going to not be aligned with me anymore, and now I have to fight them. Cool, awesome. Glad I spent so much time like powering them up for them to just bail on my party. And it's very much like you reach a point near the end where it's like, okay, here are the 3 different like endings you can follow, and I have zero interest in like going back and like seeking out what the other ones are. Even though it
Yeah.
has opened up like a new game plus mode for me, I'm just like, this game was too long to warrant that amount of attention from me. And I've been thinking about it because I think one of the comparisons that a lot of people make or have made towards it kind of in the lead up to it is like Final Fantasy Tactics. It is very much kind of like trying to aspire to that like world powers struggle, fight, and deception and betrayals and those kinds of things. And it definitely left me feeling like I think I just don't have the patience for Fantasy Tactics type of story now, or at least not one that's kind of the like tactics light that this one feels. Because yeah, it just didn't do a great job of sucking me in. There were like a few characters where I was like, okay, like I really enjoy these, but there was also like half of my roster that I just never used. Like they joined my encampment and it kind of gave me like a breakdown of like, here are their abilities, and I was like, I don't have any interest in like, I've got a team of like 8 to 10 people, and that's pretty much all you ever need is like your 10 warriors or something like that, because there's no permadeath in this. Like you don't have, it's not like a Fire Emblem where like if a character dies in battle, boom, they're gone. They die, they come right back up right at the beginning of or at the end of the fight or whatever. So like yeah, there were just characters who came, and when they like joined my team, they were like 6 levels below like where everybody else was at, and I was like, I'm not gonna spend the time to like get you up to speed. Like, no, you could just stay at the camp and peace out there. So yeah, didn't have like the best of balance in a lot of those regards, but it was an interesting enough time. It's like right now it is a tentative game of the year like thing on my list, in that I've played 3 new games this year, and so it is like number 3 of those 3, behind Horizon Forbidden West and Nobody Saves the World. Depending on where the rest of the year shakes out, it might stay up there, but like I definitely found myself comparing this a little bit to Fire Emblem 3 Houses that came out a few years ago and was my game of the year back in 2019. The first year we launched this site. And it just doesn't, it misses the mark on that. Like it doesn't have enough interesting like relationship building between your party members, because it's very much like, oh, you maybe get like 1 or 2 scenes with them outside of like the main thrust of the story, to fill in a little bit of backstory and stuff, whereas like in Fire Emblems, you're like building up relationships with those characters, and you're like each of them has their own little like arc over the course of the game. And so I thought this one kind of missed the mark on those elements, but a solid tactical strategy game. If a little oddly and mispaced. But yeah, that's kind of my triangle strategy thoughts. I don't imagine it's something that you were like had eyes on or anything like that, Frank, but any questions or anything?
Yeah, I don't think it's something I'm gonna possibly check out. I did watch your Let's Play, and I was kinda coming and going
Yeah,
while that was on in the
it,
background, and, like, it would to your point, I was like, you were, like, always in a cutscene
yeah,
talking to people, and I
yeah,
was like, I barely saw any of the gameplay, like
exactly, yeah,
and I had heard you mention that before, and then seeing it, I was like, yeah, this is, like, a really heavy-handed story,
yeah,
like
yeah.
and
It's
so it's kind of unfortunate too that it almost seems like they went too big and, like, too many characters and too many things instead of just making, like, 10 people that have really fleshed out stories.
Yeah, like yeah, especially in that like the let's play that we did. Like I finished the first chapter and I remember thinking as I was playing like, oh, I could probably call it there. It's it's I think it was like around an hour mark or whatever. I was like, meh, like we haven't done some of the other element. Like I didn't do the scales side of the story or anything like that. So I'll throw another chapter out there, and then yeah, it was just like scene after scene after scene, and then like I think one more battle that I did in that, and I still that let's play still doesn't have like that like vote on the scales kind of like that got introduced basically like in chapter 3 or something like that right after I finished recording. So I was like, oh well, I'm not like this has already gone on long enough and showed off very little of like actual gameplay of this kind of thing. So yeah, it's definitely a slow start of a RPG, a tactical RPG kind of game. But like once like I was in combat, I was always enjoying the combat itself. It has like cool like flanking mechanics of if if you have an ally in front of an enemy and behind an enemy, like when you attack like the enemy behind the enemy, or like if basically yeah, if you're on both sides of an enemy and you attack, the person on the other side will also get like an opportunity attack effectively and kind of like add some extra damage to it. So you can kind of like play with that in some like clever ways where like, oh, I can't I really need to heal my guy, so I'm just going to use a potion, but I'm at least going to put him in position so that when this other person moves, he'll get an attack and he'll get to do some damage, even though right now, like my priority is heal him up. So it led to some cool and interesting like little strategy kinds of ideas and stuff like that. But yeah, other than that, it is a very story heavy game for the amount of gameplay that's in there. And I think they could have found a better balance and just thrown a few more, battle sequences in there in between scenes, especially when it was like, it would be like 4 cutscenes in a row at the same place. It's like, why did you even pull me out? Like, why wasn't this all just one thing? Like, sure, it would have
Yeah.
been like one long thing, but you pull me out and this is still the only thing I can do. Like, what is the point? Just let it keep going. All right. But yeah, overall, still a fun game, and I'm not mad that I put the time into it or anything like that. It's just, it's it. I was hoping it would be better than it ultimately ended up being, but still, it's probably like in the we don't really do too much in the way of like reviews anymore, but it's probably like a 7.75. It's a solid, good experience. I had a good time with it. So yeah, that is Triangle Strategy. So let's throw it over to you, Frank, for a little blast from the past. You've been playing some Bayonetta. So tell me about your thoughts on that. You and I spoke about this a little bit, kind of off air the other night when we did that D Plus show. But yeah, how you thinking? What are you thinking of Bayonetta so far?
I'm enjoying it. Like last time we spoke about it, I was kind of said like I like it, but I wasn't like in love with it, and I'm warmer on it than I was then. But I'm still not like, oh my god, this is the like the best thing ever. Like, but I'm only in chapter 4, or I'm in chapter 5 now technically, I guess, because I did chapter 4. And there's a lot I do like about it. Like it has a really cool style. The gameplay I'm finally like kind of adjusted to. Like at first I thought it like the control scheme was a little bit weird and it almost just like some of the combos and stuff felt a little bit weird. But now that I'm like a lot more used to it and what it wants me to do to like keep combos going and also not get hit, like I've also bought some like new techniques from the store that gave me like some new cool moves that I've been using. And then one of the techniques I bought is when you dodge and hit the gunfire button at the same time, you do like a Max Payne, like shoot around the room, and then you do like a cool punch with like your hair that comes out of like a portal through the ground.
Hmm.
And that's like a cool combo move. And I got into a fight where the enemies were on fire, and you couldn't attack them like physically because they were on fire. But then I was like, well, I have this new gun move, so now I can finally. I'm just spamming that move over and over again now. Um, but now it's definitely now that I'm getting further and it's connecting with me a little bit more. The story is still kind of like really nonsensical. Like, and I understand it will explain things, but it really just puts you in on the deep end and is
Mhm.
just like, and I guess that's kind of part of the point because it's one of those almost like Bayonetta is a little bit like amnesiac. So it is a little bit of that, like she's trying to figure out like what is going on and who she is, but it really just throws you into the deep end of like what this world is and who these people are.
Mhm.
Um, but it's a fun game. Like I think it plays pretty well. It's fun to mess around with, and it has like weird, wacky characters. Well, the only thing I like don't love is like some of the cutscenes are just like JPEG like stills that are lightly animated, like smoke will be like moving in the background, and it reminds me of like somebody's Flash animation or like a
Mhm.
YouTube video from like 2008.
Yeah.
Um, and it definitely was like, "Oh, this is my Bayonetta fan movie," or something, like but, like so that's why I wish there was almost, like, more production on some of those things, but I acknowledge that it's, like, it is an older game, and, like, I think this is one of Platinum's, like, first games ever as, like, Platinum Studios. So it's definitely makes sense that it is definitely rough around the edges, at least these days. But I think it is fun, like, and I dig the kind of it's like this angels versus demons kind of vibe. Like Bayonetta is definitely like this witch that's kind of like hunting angels. Some of the angel designs are like super crazy because they're like what I would call like biblically accurate. So they're
Mhm.
just like these crazy like monsters with like wings and eyeballs and stuff. And there's like these weird little cupid heads that like fly around and attack you. And there's like there's like a lot of cool stuff that's in there, and so I'm hoping as I go through it, I hope it kind of continues to grow on me to the point where I am like I definitely love it because it is fun. It definitely gets a little bit hard. I'm just playing on normal, but like it definitely ramps up the difficulty because there's the chapter 4 is just an entire boss fight, but like the boss has like 4 health bars all of a sudden, and I still have like I've had like 1 health upgrade because I bought the techniques instead of just upgrading my health, and I'm like I guess I should have just been upgrading my health, like, because now I'm getting my ass kicked all of a sudden, like,
Yeah.
um, but it is fun. It is totally, it's very Devil May Cry. If like anybody out there has played Devil May Cry, because it's from the same guy, the director, and I could definitely see it. This is his like, I can't do Devil May Cry anymore, but we're gonna keep doing Devil May Cry, you know.
Mhm. Yeah.
But as somebody who loves Devil May Cry, I definitely, at least personally, prefer Devil May Cry, at least at this moment, because I played it for the first time in 2019, and immediately off the bat, I was like, I love everything about this. I love the style, the world, the characters, like everything is so great, the story and everything. So like I definitely don't know if Bayonetta hits that much for me, but I think like it could probably hopefully by like the time I get to the end.
Mhm. Yeah, we talked a little bit, like, I went through after having heard about Bayonetta for many, many years, and I guess probably more so after having, like, been introduced to the character through, like, Smash Brothers, I picked up the, like, Bayonetta 1 and 2, like, pack on Switch a few years back, and sat down and played through, like, the first Bayonetta game, and I don't have like a significant affinity for those types of games, the platinums or the basically like the you know fast
Character action
paced
games.
character action games, yeah, where you're trying to like get the get the S rank through the mission or like get all those combos and stuff like that. And so yeah, for me, like as you're saying these things, I'm like, yeah, I guess I kind of vaguely remember those elements of Bayonetta, but like I certainly like I was not getting good ranks on any of those levels or any of those fights or anything like that. And so yeah, like the notion of like, oh yeah, you're thrown in the deep end. I'm like, oh yeah, I feel like I remember there was a little girl and there was a guy who's a like kind of romantic interest, but also kind of like antagonistic. And I want to say he was like a journalist or something like that.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
I just met him.
yeah,
Do you
yeah.
meet him in the Angel City or whatever, and he's like looking
Maybe.
for
I
Bayonetta?
I couldn't even tell you the locations of that game. That's like so
Yeah.
much of that just kinda like washed over me. I was just like I was basically playing it in bed before going to sleep at night kind of thing, and just like by the morning, I'm sure I probably forgot about whatever I had done the night before. So, it's like it was very much like action for action's sake kind of gameplay, and I'm like, "Okay, like this is fine." I'm sure I was playing it on like a super easy mode or whatever. Um uh and yeah, I'm not the person that's trying to like chase those like combo things and get everything pieced together like that. Um, but I also remember those like, oh yeah, like here's a cutscene and it's basically just a still image. It's which I funnily enough, like when I went and was playing through the Yakuza games last year, um, playing like I played Kiwami 1 and 2 first, which obviously had been like remade from their original kind of interpretations. And so then when I went to Yakuza 0 and like it had those kinds of cutscenes for a lot of stuff of like, okay, here's Kiryu talking to somebody, and it's just like a still image of Kiryu while like the subtitles come up on the screen or something like that. I was like, oh, this is weird. This is like I'm so used to here in 2021, 2022, seeing like fully, acted out cutscenes or something to some kind of degree. But yeah, like in those older games or whatever, it was just kind of that like, okay, like we don't have the budget to animate all this stuff and have these people like talking and walking around in a scene together. So let's just do like a cool still frame of them, and yeah, maybe we'll throw in some like After Effects kind of like smoke, or we'll like do a light zoom in or something, or kind of like, a little shaky cam kind of something, those little flavors to like make it so you're not just staring at like a static screen for, 3 minutes of time or something like that. I'll be very curious when Bayonetta 3 finally comes out if it is more in line with like today's production values versus, because yeah, this first one came out in like 2009, so it's a good,
Yeah.
more than a decade old at this point. But yeah, I'm glad you're having a good time with it. When you played the Devil May Cry, I remember you played and I think you'd given DMC5, like I think it was in your game of the year list that year.
Yeah.
Like
It was real
did
good.
you
I should have put it
start
higher.
did you start with that one, or was that one that did you start earlier and then that was just because that was the new one that was out in 2019? You hopped to that one.
Yeah, I got the HD collection on PlayStation, and I started with DMC one,
Got
and then
it.
I played 2, 3, 4, and then 5. Like I kind of went all the way through the series in like kind of back to back to back that
Mhm.
year. And that's when I'm like, man, because like all those games are just so good and they feel great. And then I really just like I love the world and the characters and the story. Like it just hits for me in like all the right ways. And especially like they have all this like devil and demon stuff, and there's just all this, and it is all this over the top crazy action, like in especially in DMC3 when Dante drives a motorcycle up a building, like,
Mhm.
and that's like that is Bayonetta. That's what you get there too. But I just like I love so much more of it in DMC, and I can definitely see those influences in Bayonetta. But and that's why at least some of the cutscenes in Bayonetta are like fully animated, and that's when you get some crazy stuff. But it's like that's definitely like, well, we only have the budget for so many of these kind of action sequences.
Yeah.
Um, I can kind of see almost too where they even made some of the levels like bigger and badder because like there is some crazy sequences. Like there's one where you're fighting on like a clock tower that's just falling from the sky.
Mhm.
And I'm like, that's like it's a cool actiony like set piece. And they kind of put you like that's where you start the game. Like you're just immediately into the action. And I'm assuming it's gonna do like an Uncharted 2 where that like wraps around and becomes like the ending. It may or may not. That's just what the vibe I got from it.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, that's why it's cool to see at least in some of those cutscenes, where like if they when they have like the bigger budget that they could play with.
Mhm. Yeah, I think looking through kind of other Platinum games, I was like, have I played any others? And I had played Near Automata,
Mm,
the year that came out, or maybe it was right after it came out or something like that, because everybody had like gushed about like, yes, you have to like play it 3 times to get like the good ending or whatever. And when I finally did, I was like, okay, well, that's not really playing it 3 times. I mean, they that was another one that had like pacing issues for me, whereas like the
mhm,
first 2 playthroughs of it are largely like the same, just from like different
mhm.
characters perspectives, and I was like, I feel like they could have tightened that up, but like the third playthrough is like a completely different part of a story. It's basically like 2.5 playthroughs to get through the real ending or whatever. um and it was like an interesting enough, that one was an interesting enough story, but like it had a lot of the same kind of like third person action gameplay where I was just like, I'm so tuned out for most of this, I'm just kind of going through the motions to get to the next objective beat or whatever. I'm not trying to maximize my damage or whatever. I'm not
Yeah.
like, it was another one. I'm playing this on whatever easy mode it is. So it's like, it's not challenge because I'm not looking for this to be a challenge. I'm not looking for that kind of thing. It's the same kind of thing. Like if I could play a Demon Souls game or a Souls game on easy, like I would do that because I'd be interested in the design and stuff, but I'm not interested in just like the game beating me over the head just for the sake of
Yeah.
it. Um,
Because that's like I never minded like a hard. I don't mind like a hard, difficult game. But the thing I hate about some of the FromSoft's games is just like you just lose everything.
mhm,
Like because in Bayonetta, if I die, it's just like, or even Devil May Cry, it's like, okay, we're just gonna put you back in the same level or even the same battle that you were in. But like if I die in Bloodborne, it's like I played it for 45 minutes. I only died the one time, but it's like I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. And then I eventually died. And that puts me right back at the beginning. I've made literally no progress and I've
mhm,
learned nothing. So it's like, I get that's like part of the game, but that's why those don't hit for me. Like, I don't mind something that's difficult. And some of my favorite games are very hard, but it's like when you die or when you fail, it immediately pops you back into the action, like Hotline Miami or like Devil May Cry or even
yeah,
like Trials. Like, when you fail, you're right back in it. And that's like when I can keep going. I hate having the rug like pulled out from under me and I lose all my progress.
yeah, yeah. Um, well, with so you're a few chapters in. I don't remember how long Bayonetta is. But are you gonna try and like move on to Bayonetta 2 after that, or are you at that point are you going to be looking into moving something? Like are you playing Bayonetta to kind of gear up for Bayonetta 3 eventually when that comes out like you did with the DMC games, or is there a chance like if this one just doesn't grab you ultimately you'll just kind of maybe walk away from it and be like, "Yeah, maybe I'll just go play DMC 5 again."
I should play DMC5 because they did the PS5 upgrade.
Mhm.
So it's like, but yeah, like I am kind of checking it out and getting ready for 3. It's like I've heard so much good things about Bayonetta for like my whole life and in like Platinum games in general. But I'm kind of with you where like that wasn't a genre I was into, like these character action games. But in the more recent years, since now I'm like a giant Devil May Cry fan, that has kind of opened me to be wanting to check these out. And right now I would plan on playing Bayonetta 2 and then eventually when 3 comes out, I would definitely be down to check it out, but I am kind of leaving the door open for like if this doesn't connect with me more or by like if, even by I finish it if I'm just like, yeah, that was fine. I might just like give up on the second one like and just kind of move on because the one that I have, I'm playing out PlayStation. I have like the dual pack of Bayonetta and then Vanquish.
Okay.
So that's kind of my other thing is like I've never played Vanquish. I've also heard good things about that, and so that would be kind of my next thing to go into if it's just not doing it for me. Because like I am having a good time with Bayonetta, but I could also see just like hitting a point where I'm like I'm either not going to finish this or even just finishing it and then just kind of giving up on like the series.
Yeah. Fair enough. Not something you're eager to hop in and try and platinum or anything like that. Especially because I
Definitely
think those
not.
ones have like pain in the ass platinums, aren't they? Where it's like, oh, you have to get like 9,999 coins or something like some weird stuff like that. And yeah, those
Yeah, because the currency is halos, and
yeah,
you
that
need like
is.
millions of halos, and then you have to buy everything in the game, which actually costs more halos than the halo trophy requires you to get. And then you every time you beat the game, I think you unlock a harder difficulty, and it goes up from I'm on normal, which is the hardest I have right now, but then it goes like hard, something else, and then like climax, and so
Mhm.
you have to just beat it, and I'm like that's definitely not in I don't think in the cards for me. This is one of those ones where I'm like any trophies I get along the way is just a W, you
Yeah,
know.
there you go. Yeah, exactly. Cool. Any final thoughts on Bayonetta before we move on?
No, I hope I definitely enjoy it a little bit more as I go through like and I'll probably even check out more of Platinum's library cuz like I definitely am more open to this kind of game and even like I might even go back to Nier cuz like I played Nier when it came out and I just didn't even finish my first playthrough. I just like was not having a great time really. Like I just didn't even like how it felt.
Mhm.
And so I didn't even get that far to get like invested in the story that everybody loves.
Yeah.
But it's like since I'm more open to these games, I definitely am excited to kind of go through Platinum's kind of like library and check it out because they are definitely like the I don't know, they're like the best at these kind of games, you
Yeah.
know, and so that's why I'm excited. And I'm excited ultimately, this is slightly unrelated for more Devil May Cry. Where's DMC6? Come on, Capcom.
There you go. Yeah, you got that. They got well. They what they just announced. Oh, what was the one they had at the at the
The
PlayStation State of
dinosaur one.
Play. Was it the dinosaur one? That one?
Yeah, it's like Primeval or something, I
Yeah.
forget, like, the one where the dinosaurs are just falling from space and it looks kinda like
Exoprimal or
Anthem.
something. Yeah, some
That
weird stuff
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah. So they're working on that. They're working on Street Fighter 6. So, maybe they got that that next Devil May Cry coming somewhere down the pike. Who knows? Cool. Yeah, yeah, I mean, looking at Platinum, also Platinum just came out with Babylon's Fall, which I don't think
Yeah.
reviewed well at all.
Nope.
So,
Yeah.
you
That
can
was
check
one
that
that
out too.
that I was almost curious about it, like, when I saw that that was coming out, because that's one that was just totally wasn't on my radar, and then I hear, like, the day of, like, "Hey, this is out," and then I hear, like, "Oh, yeah, it's not good. No, nobody play this. This is real bad." And I'm like, "Oh, man."
Yeah.
Platinum has, like, this weird all over the place track record of, like, because if you remember, they also did, like, the Legend of Korra game, and then they did, like, the
Yeah.
Transformers game, and then they did the TMNT game, and, like,
Yep.
those are all over the place. So it's like, man, I don't yeah, they have, like, a weird track record. I own that Transformers game, so maybe I'll go check that out because that always looks super sweet.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. I was just looking through it. And yeah, because I remember that little run of like, like Tim Geddes or something being like super excited about the like licensed games that they're making, but they were like announcing and making so many of them. And I was like, these can't be good, right? There's no way these can like actually like play as well. But then like a couple of them like were like, hey, this is probably as good as this kind of game could have been.
Yeah.
I feel like I remember him saying that, especially with like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles one. And then yeah, like right after Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was Nier Automata, that was like that blew everybody away and was like game of the year contender for a lot of people and stuff. And it's like, all right, then just they're out there. Because yeah, they also obviously had the notoriously canceled Scalebound game that was going
Oh,
to be
yeah.
like an Xbox exclusive. So be interesting to see where they go next following Bayonetta 3. All right. So yeah, lastly, and I won't spend a ton of time on this one just because it will, inevitably be probably a that D plus show here in the next month or so. But I did sit down and watch Turning Red on the new Pixar film. I really enjoyed it. It was, it's an interesting one because it's like it's specifically a like period piece in that they set it in like 2002 in Toronto. Girl is like obsessed with a boy band kind of thing. And that's 2002. I was in high school, so I was like a few years older than this character kind of thing. But like still very fresh off of like like, I mean, it's almost my sister's age because yeah, she I guess like my sister even I guess is a year or two older than this. But like she was all in on the Backstreet Boys in sync kind of craze of things, and so by just the transitive property, as was I. um
We were an NSYNC household. My sister loved NSYNC.
yeah, we were in sync as well. Like Backstreet's Back, probably the best song of either of
Yep.
them, but yeah, like In Sync was much more like prominent in my my household, and I'm pretty sure Jamie went to like a few of those concerts and stuff. But yeah, it's a really good story, really good coming of age kind of tale, and I think it does a great job kind of exploring like this little crew of like female friendship that the main character May has to help her through this like trying time in her life. And the thing that I tweeted out effectively is this movie is weird because like this movie and Encanto both kind of have the same like almost like the same like main real conflict of like an overbearing maternal figure in their lives is putting too much pressure on these characters, and then there's like weird little magical elements to go alongside that, but like that's really where the conflict is coming from, is the mother character or the grandmother character butting heads and saying like, you need to be better than this, you need to do things this way, you need to do things my way. And like there's this element of like that is hits so close to home. Just like from like I remember as somebody who was like the overachiever and stuff in elementary, middle school, high school kind of thing. My mom wasn't, I don't think, I don't think of her to the degree of these characters. I think they are heightened for the sake of drama and stuff like that. But like my mom was very much the one who was, you know, got to do your homework for, you know, you play video games and do that, and like how your grades, like trying to keep me on the path of being like straight A student kind of thing. Um, and so there's this element of like almost gaslighting that comes from that, where like if you're, you know, disappointing in the slightest way, boom, passive aggressive, just like ramping that up to 11, and we're just gonna be like it like sticks daggers into you kind of thing. And so there's a lot like I definitely found myself feeling that a lot through watching this movie, and like the pain for the main character and stuff like that. And I tweeted out effectively like I kind of just missed the days where it was just straight up witches and evil and like
Yep.
clear cut villains, because these ones that are like so based in reality that we get recently, it's like I don't I don't like these because this is what too many people are actually experiencing on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Like this isn't escapism. This is bringing up trauma and whatnot. So like there is definitely that flavor, but um, overall, like it's a fun story. For those that don't know, basically the premise is this girl like like kind of magically turns into a red panda when like she's too stressed out or something like that, and hijinks ensue because she's also a 13-year-old girl who's always going to have, you know, high emotions at that time, and whether it's crushes on boys or, you know, anger towards a bully or the boy band coming into town, like but yeah, it's a very fun story. And I think they do a really job, you know, as I think a lot of kind of the Disney Pixar stuff has been trying to do recently in recent days, or recent years. I think there's a like a good sense of representation across the screen, in that, like, you know, they're like the main characters are speaking Cantonese at times, and you know, and have kind of a Chinese American kind of background, or not even Chinese American because they're in Toronto, so Chinese Canadian, kind of as their lineage. But then there's, you know, there's also kind of there's like Korean in there in the mix. I think there was only like one white girl. The boy band is, you know, multi-ethnic kind of as well. And even that, they kind of like, I think they have some fun jokes at the expense of boy bands of like, you know, this is the Dreamboat character, and this one does this, and this one does this, and these two are also there. It's very much like it's the Chris Kirkpatrick and Lance Bass of the group. Got it. Okay. You know, those kinds of vibes. But yeah, they do it in some fun ways. So yeah, Turning Red, a lot of fun. Has like I was surprised, I guess, because I will say like the musical elements I don't feel like were too prominent, like apart from like, oh, like, you know, the big third act is going to be at the boy band concert kind of thing. um but like the boy band didn't have like a ton in the way of songs. I think they have like two, maybe three songs that kind of are introduced, written by Billie Eilish and I think her brother Phineas or something, whoever like
Yeah, they're like a duo.
yeah, yeah. But then also like the background score for the movie is just also Ludwig Göransson,
Mm,
who I always think back to from Community and kind of producing a lot of the Childish Gambino stuff, but more recently,
yeah.
you know, Black Panther composer and The Mandalorian, and then subsequently Book of Boba Fett. So like it was almost like a weird change of pace to see him doing this more like poppy kind of soundtrack. Oh, but in that, I'll also shout out like this. I think more than any recent like Pixar or even Disney thing, like has very clearly like this is a cartoon, so we're going to do things that only cartoons can do, kind of like animation style. And they, because a lot of the characters are, you know, Asian influences, there's a lot of like anime flavor into this, even though it's like CGI. They will have like moments where they just go straight anime eyes and like big and like watery kind of eyes and stuff like that, and big kind of like expressive faces and stuff like that you would see in a like classic Disney like 2D cartoon kind of thing, versus like the we're trying to keep everything like very realistic feeling. And I thought that was another like an interesting, fun flavor to a lot of elements of this, like seeing kind of like just crazy, very unrealistic faces and moments and bits, in a like as a fun reminder that like you can have fun with cartoons.
Yeah.
They did a really good job with that. So yeah, I'm sure it'll be, probably be like an early April episode of that D Plus show. I'll throw it on the calendar or something so people can have some time to sit down and watch it. And we will discuss it more over there. But yeah, overall, it was a fun time, and it all that said, like it also went places I wasn't expecting it to go. So,
Hmm.
fun little flavors there. Um, yeah, so that is Turning Red. You gonna check that one out, Frank?
Possibly, like it definitely sounds interesting, and some of even what you've told me here definitely kind of makes me want to see it more than some of the clips I saw online.
Hmm.
But it like I mean, Pixar's always great, and I haven't always kept up with some of their more modern work, but everything they did when I was younger was like amazing. So, like I imagine that it might be worth checking out, especially even maybe if we do it for like a D plus show, like you were saying. Maybe I'll go stream it then. I still need to see some of their other ones, like Luca, because that one
Yep.
is like the Italian one, and I was like, I gotta go see that. Like that's my people. Like I'm being
Bazzani.
represented.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's definitely another one we can sit down and I can throw that on the calendar as well for D plus, because yeah, I watched that one back when it came out. Like there's an element of this would have been a fun one to see in theaters, and it would have been a fun one I
Hmm.
think for families to go see in theaters. But since the pandemic, basically like Pixar has just kind of like fully gone in on like every Pixar, or like Disney has gone, every Pixar is just going to go straight to Disney Plus, and like those never even went to that premium access kind of thing of like, hey, it's going to be there, but you have to pay extra for it. It was just like, no, we're just going to use this to try and sell the service. And this one originally was going to be like the first one they released back in theaters, but back when like Omicron was flaring up in January, they basically pulled it from the release calendar, said, no, we're just going to, better safe than sorry, we're just going to do Disney, or like Disney Plus alone, which great, because that like makes it, I'm sure, more accessible to families, and
Hmm.
especially a family of four or something. It's going to be way cheaper to sit down and just watch this around the TV as opposed to going to the theater for the day and doing that kind of stuff. um but yeah, it almost feels like, oh man, like because like even Encanto had a theatrical run. Admittedly, it also came to Disney Plus pretty quickly after that, but like this would have been a cool one to see, I think, on the big screen. But alas, and I'm sure there are like some specialty screenings and stuff out there where people are doing that, but I don't think there are any around here. So Disney Plus it was. It was basically like there were, like when I got off work on Friday, I was like, okay, I've got three things I kind of want to watch this weekend. Turning Red was one of them. The Adam Project on Netflix, the new Ryan Reynolds one, is another one, and then this
I need to
week's
check that out.
Bond movie, A View to a Kill. I've done two of those. I still need to watch the Ryan Reynolds one, and so maybe I'll find time for that here later today or tomorrow, because like Turning Red and the Adam Project, both of those were like getting like everybody was like blowing up and being like, oh, I love, like this was a lot of fun on social media and stuff like that. So, um, and both of them kind of like I knew both of them were coming. I didn't realize both of them were coming so soon, until
Yeah.
like a couple of days before they launched. It was like, oh, okay, yep, those snuck up on you. Um, these digital only releases, they're weird.
Well,
But
that's
yeah,
how, especially since time is still so weird now, that
true.
like stuff things just show up, and I'm like, oh, this is here.
Yep, indeed. All right. Well, I think that is going to do it for this episode. A little bit of a short one this week, but so be it. When I don't, when like Cameron doesn't pop on, we don't have like, oh, let's go on about Elden Ring for half an hour or something like that. So, gonna be a little bit of a brisker pace on this. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this episode. Thank you, Frank, for joining me to chat about these things. You can follow Frank at Irrelevant Jokes. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Frank?
Yeah, quick shout out to our other podcast, that D Plus show. The most recent episode is you and me talking about Jungle Cruise, which was a surprisingly fun movie and a good time,
Mm-hmm.
and a good chat. So I definitely recommend people check that out.
Yeah, definitely. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. As I said, I think on that episode of Jungle Cruise, this is going to be a light week for me in that I'm doing another Disney trip in honor of my birthday coming up this weekend. So there's going to be a lot of the stuff that I'm usually on is either already like well pre-recorded or will be Disney themed or theme park themed. So this week's Let's Plays on the YouTube are both going to be from Planet Coaster, where I kind of play through each of the tutorial like sections of Planet Coaster. One of them is just kind of like here's how you build a theme park, and then the other one is like here's how you build a roller coaster specifically. So you can go check those out on Tuesday and Thursday at youtube.com/thatnerdysite. And then this Friday's That D Plus show is going to be another behind the attraction episode, where I go through a couple episodes of Behind the Attraction on Disney Plus, in honor of a Disney trip, as that was the episode, or one of those episodes went live when I first went back to Disneyland last year, and then another one we did, like I did a part 2 when like the group of us went, and so this will be like let's just keep that train a rolling, just like in honor of Trevor's Disney trip. Here's a pre-recorded bit. So yeah, go check out all that fun stuff, or check out just my, because I'm sure I'll do shenanigans or post some kind of pictures and stuff while at Disney. So yeah, that's what I have to plug this week. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site, or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. As always, thank you for listening. Stay nerdy and be good to each other.